185 Miles South, a hardcore punk rock podcast.
This episode was recorded on May 4th, 2019. Today we have Tim from Amenity, House of Suffering, and Adult Crash. Missing any?
Nope.
You jammed a song on Tit Wrench.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Tim is very similar to the guy I had the first week, Joe Rebus, in that I hate to say you're older, but you're older. And you're like a rad positive energy that everyone's excited to see around, and you seem so friendly and welcoming to everyone, which is awesome. And also kind of crazy because you've seen it all, right? You started going to shows in the early 80s and you're still interested, which is like inspirational that you find merit in like a youth culture.
I do. Definitely.
Yeah. So when did you start going to shows?
I mean, in the early 80s in high school, probably like, it would have been 83, 82. And shows at that time, at least for me, were random little, local, very local bands. Wasn't necessarily at bigger hall shows or anything. That did come around that same time, but, there were bands who I can't even remember who they were, that might play somewhere in Chula Vista or something like that.
Well, where would a band like Battalion of Saints play in like 83 in San Diego?
Battalion of Saints, San Diego at the time, there was like Adams Avenue Theater, which is now a fabric store on Adams. There was Fairmont Hall. And I would say most of the time I saw Battalion of Saints was probably at Fairmont Hall. And then Jackie Robinson YMCA. I don't think I ever saw Battalion of Saints play at Jackie Robinson. They were probably broken up by the time Jackie Robinson started getting going, but primarily at a place like Fairmont Hall.
And they were drawing about how many kids?
Oh, I'm not good at numbers, but
like were these big ragers?
These were bigger shows than the big shows, quote unquote, that you would go to in the hardcore today. But Fairmont Hall held a few hundred people, so I don't know. Fairmont Hall might have something like 300-400 people, but I could be wrong with that. Adams Avenue had twice as many, at least, of that. Adams Avenue might have, over 1,000 people, like, bigger bands like, say, the Dead Kennedys, Black Flag playing there.
And all these bands came through.
And, what do you mean?
They came through down to San Diego.
The ones I mentioned, yeah. San Diego was always, though, kind of, at least for me, kind of dry for the bands that I really wanted to see.
Which was who?
Well, like, I wanted to see, like, for instance, Negative Approach. Almost got to see them in San Diego in the early 80s. And saw, ironically, with the Oxnard connection here, ironically, I saw Dr. No in their place. But, I remember Negative Approach was the band that was like, oh my God, because I wanted to see, and so I did see at that time there would be bands that would come through, like, say, 7 Seconds, Youth Brigade. But, we wanted to see, Negative Approach. We wanted to see all these East Coast hardcore bands that really never came anywhere near quite this way. Maybe they'd skip and go to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But, instead there was a lot of like English kind of punk bands, Abrasive Wheels, who honestly I would not know Abrasive Wheels if we were listening to them right now.
Sure.
I'm not knocking that, but it just wasn't the taste for 17-year-old.
Yeah, you wanted the crazy shit.
I wanted the stuff from DC and Boston. Yeah. And so we would get stuff like that. And some of that stuff, don't get me wrong, was good that came through, like that. GBH would play and Exploited and those kinds of bands. And then Battalion of Saints would be a support act, or Social Distortion would come down here. It was a lot of stuff like that. The Minutemen, which were always great to see. but yeah, what I wanted to see and really be a part of was this slightly more, you could say, hardcore scene.
Yeah, the faster stuff.
That was this other stuff. And then, there were parts of that coming down. I mentioned Dr. No and Justice League. I remember Justice League playing. I was really stoked to see them. And then Negative Approach was supposed to come through, and like I'm at the show. There was a flyer and everything at the show, and there I am waiting, and somebody comes up on the mic and says, "Just in case everybody hasn't heard, Negative Approach will not be playing tonight. They broke up last night in Los Angeles." And
wow. Wow.
It was a bummer. So I have to honestly say I've never really given Dr. No a chance because
He's so bitter because of that.
I couldn't connect them with that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And then when Negative Approach finally did play out in California, forget what year that was in Pomona, at this reunion period, and I told him about that, and he said, "Oh, well, that guy was lying because we didn't even make it to Los Angeles. We didn't even get anywhere near California. He probably just wanted people to keep coming to the show.
Sure. So they never made it out back in the day then.
So back then, no, they never made it out.
I regret not going to that Pomona show so bad.
That was awesome. Show.
I know. Rob always talks about it. It was like the greatest show.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
That's awesome. So did Minor Threat come to San Diego?
Minor Threat came to San Diego. Didn't see Minor Threat.
Did you just miss them by a year?
Maybe it was. Yeah, I missed them. Obviously there was no internet connection. It was a little different.
Sure.
And plus, all that music scene was just completely oddball.
Yeah.
And you didn't always hear about different shows. And then I think also too, because it was special to a lot of people, I think a lot of people didn't want to share even that, hey, this band is coming.
Oh, they were bogarting the Threat show.
Yeah, already.
That's fun.
And but I know the stories of that show is always that was one of the most violent shows, and that's when Ian MacKaye said, "I'm never in any band. I'm never going to play San Diego again," and he didn't until I guess it was the late '90s with Fugazi, because it was such a mess. And I remember a good friend, Chris Chacon, who did BCT tapes, and he went to, I believe what he said was he went to that show, but he didn't go in because he saw so many people that had been bloodied and things from fighting. It was Minor Threat, it was Husker Du, and I imagine it was the Battalion of the Saints was probably on that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly. The flyers around, you can find that.
That's kind of a rep of San Diego, that it was always maybe a little more violent. And why do you think that was? Do you think it's that there's so much military culture here, and then also you have like the East County, you have you have a convergence of military, beach culture, and then also like that East County vibe. So it seems like it's like a trifecta of meatheadedness.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was also though, because when I think back, not even to hardcore, but when I think back to life in say 1980, and I wasn't going to shows in 1980, or I think of life in 1970 something. San Diego was very downtown, for instance, you were at the end of the road. You were downtown. Downtown there were still some old buildings there. Now, of course, it's all gone, but there were all these motels. There were people that lived downtown, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of people out on the streets. Not quite the homeless thing that it has in downtown now, but lots of people in these motels. And there was lots of drunk sailors downtown or up in Oceanside, drunk Marines, and lots of prostitution and different things down there. It was a much dirty, seedier town than it is today. And I think San Diego I think that was part of it. That was when people started using the term slow death. And I think that was because when you looked at San Diego, it was like, oh my God,
yeah.
It was in bad shape. And so that's how when I think back on just San Diego in general, I think of those kinds of things. And I think of the way from the 70s, there was this, things started slowing down, coming to a halt, and then the 80s were coming in a lot faster. And, and when I say 70s coming to a halt, I mean, after the 60s, all this upheaval, all this going on, and then it all got kind of shut down with drugs, and things started screeching to a halt, and then the 80s kind of crashed into it. And I think with people in general in San Diego, I think a lot of the violence and things like that was just almost just this kind of frustration young people had at that time in like, what am I a part of? What am my community? What is this community that I live in, and what's it like? And I don't want to defend people that did some really stupid things to other people and hurt them back then at shows, because there were some really bad things. But I will say that a lot of those people were, besides drugs, you have to look at what brought them to those drugs and brought them to that anger, brought them to that violence. And I think it was just feeling like, what am I a part of?
Yeah, it's the end of the road for me.
Where do I connect in this city? Where's my community? And people were finding that in punk and hardcore. But I think a lot of the people were just flying by the seat of their pants, like in this whole music scene where this aggressive music is going on, and there's no real focal point in it, maybe quite yet. It was sort of, but so you go to the shows, and there'd be people with mohawks and shaved heads and leather jackets, and there'd be the more skater-like kids, and but there'd also be bikers, like real bikers, not just the guy that bought the Harley, but
right.
Like real bikers. There were communists there passing out pamphlets and information. There were Gothic people. There were some hippies. There were some other people that I wouldn't even know how to describe. And then I think you just put them all in this pressure cooker of Fairmont Hall or whatever it may be. And you got the music wound up, and the alcohol and the meth. And it just would be, this mess. And like I said, I don't want to defend people for doing those things, because most of the people knew enough not to, hit someone over the head with a folding chair. But I think when you look at the context of what people were doing at the time with their lives and in their community, what their community was doing, the punk scene was kind of made to, in San Diego at least, was kind of made to explode at that point.
Yeah. And who were the people running with it other than like a Battalion of Saints? What bands were like the forebearers?
Battalion of Saints was probably the prime one. And they were always great live. They were a great band to see. Like my first guitar hero would be Chris Smith, to see him playing and just think, wow, look at that guy playing. I didn't know anything about guitar. I was like, wow, that guy is awesome. And then there were other bands that didn't quite reach up to Battalion of Saints. Manifest Destiny was one. They had a couple records out. Ministry of Truth was kind of going the more positive route.
And Manifest Destiny was what, Encinitas area?
Encinitas area, yeah.
Yeah, I love the LP.
Personality Crisis. Mm-hmm. I know I'm forgetting a lot of names, but there were a lot of local bands that didn't go too long, but at that time bands just didn't go long.
Yeah, well, a year in the lifespan of a 16-year-old punk kid is a long time.
Pretty damn long.
Yeah.
Pretty damn long.
So do you think that a lot of the negative feelings of like the shows in the city then is why you wanted to do a really positive band?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I would even say prior to that, like when I mentioned, just San Diego as a whole in the 80s or in the 70s, when I was, a lot of people think I was born in Chula Vista. I was born in Stockton, California.
Oh, you're going to break Guzman's heart. Well, the neighborhood we're in right now is actually called
Stockton. I just learned that.
Yeah. Is that wild? It's this little pocket.
Little things, little pocket of Stockton here. And so growing up in Chula Vista, probably moved to Chula Vista when I was like 3 years old. It wasn't seedy like downtown San Diego was, but it was very empty, very slow moving. There wasn't anything I was picking up negative or anything at the time, but it was just more wide open. I loved the canyon. Everywhere east of Chula Vista was just canyon area, and that was my playground. That was like my first love before skateboarding and hardcore and guitars and anything. It was the canyon, and we'd just explore for miles. We'd be little kids.
So would you just ride your bike out there and then go explore?
Just hiking out there, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and we'd hike for miles out in the canyon. And our parents knew it too, but you didn't think anything was going to happen, and nothing did. But by the time the 80s came around and everything started getting developing, and I can remember seeing the canyon just tore up. And they were going to be putting homes in and everything. And I can remember standing there, and there was a man in a suit. I mean, it was something out of a movie. And he was a developer. And he told me that too. I don't remember how old I was, just less than a teenager. And he told me he was a developer, and they were putting homes there. And I really wanted to tell that guy off.
Yeah.
But I was a little kid, and I learned from my parents, don't talk that way to people. But I think that's, for me, was kind of one of the first times as a human being where I was really kind of feeling like some angst.
Yeah.
And some there were other things. I saw war on TV and things like that, but this was like really personal.
But this is your backyard, and something that's changing. You have no control over it, and you feel it's changing. Like history's moving the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's a backslide a little bit.
Yeah, why is this happening? And so I think that was part for me. Also being, as a kid, I can remember elementary school, some guy, I totally remember the scene that's at the edge of our playground at school, and we're all getting out of school, we're leaving, and there's a van, and I remember it was playing Take a Walk on the Wild Side, KGB. And had this van, and some guy, to me, he was a big kid. He was, in hindsight, he was probably 17. But he was like, hey, and he said it mockingly, hey, dude, want to buy a lid? And I just remember thinking, and that was it. I remember thinking, I'm never going to do drugs. I'm never going to drink. And screw these guys. And then there were lots of, post hippies. They weren't really hippies. They just latched on to the drugs and all that at the end, and they'd be sleeping out in the park, stoned or whatever. And so I really latched on to this new thing of hardcore. And when I started learning about different bands like Bad Brains, I read something about Bad Brains. First of all, that they were black. And when I saw punk through Skateboarder magazine or whatever it may be, I wasn't sure, and I saw pictures of the Sex Pistols, and they had swastikas, and I didn't understand. Would I be okay with this? Am I accepted? But I learned about Bad Brains, and these guys are black. Well, then I guess it's okay for me to be there. And Minor Threat. Then learning about there's this band, and they're talking about straight edge, and I was already checking out hardcore at that time, and punk bands at that time, but. Then that could just kind of seal the deal. And then definitely then with Amenity, it was like, yeah, this has got to be something positive. Because, when I was in the early 80s in high school, I was already thinking, I was maybe thinking in hardcore, but I was saying, I want my life to have some positive purpose, some positive intent. I don't want to be the burnouts at the park. I don't want to be violent. I don't want to do this and that. What do I want to do? How can I put forth a positive message? And at that time, my interest was really in journalism and editorial cartooning and things like that. And but that just seemed so far off for a 16-year-old.
Sure.
And the more I learned about journalism and journalists, it was kind of And so, the next logical step from journalism is, of course, learning to play guitar and starting a hardcore band.
Yeah. And was Amenity your first band? Did you play around in other little bands?
Amenity was the first one.
So the 7-inch is 87. Did you demo first?
No. We
So you're starting 86-inch, or you
we
think
probably started late 80. I'm not sure. Late 85 it may have been.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started, it was, and I learned this in your other podcasts of very similar things, is that when we started, it was Sergio, Barry, and I, and nobody had anything else. I had a guitar, and I didn't know how to tune it. Not only did I not know how to tune it, I didn't know guitar had to be tuned. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought these things here are just to hold the strings on it.
Sure.
And so we were just kind of screwing around. Barry didn't have drums. I think maybe he had sticks, and he was just like hitting a pillow, and we're just trying to make something. Yeah. And then Sergio said, "Hey, I think I want to buy a bass." And like, whoa, and we bought a bass, and then we got a drum set for what did we trade for it? I think there was some amount of cash, not much, and something else was traded into it. And for some reason, I don't remember, but
$150 on a dog.
Yeah, probably not even $150. I don't even think it was that. But so Barry had these drums then, and now we were like, like has been said before, once we were together and like three of us with instruments, wow, it was like, complete noise, I'm sure, to anybody else, but to us, this was just.
But you'd still been listening to punk for a few years, so you kind of understood what a song was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it came together pretty quickly then. If you're starting in 85 and you do a 7-inch in 87, and it's a very raw sound, but it is a developed sound. You're writing hardcore songs with starts and stops and fast parts and breakdowns and yelling, and it's good.
Yeah, we
but very raw.
We at that was recorded on a little 4-track cassette recorder.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Byerly with Vinyl Communications recorded it in his backyard, and we had, like I said, we started practicing without instruments, and then once we got going, we played Pete Navarro, his backyard, not his backyard, but his downstairs sort of a basement that we played in, and us, a band called Reality. The drummer of Reality, Pat, is the drummer of Adult Crash,
mm-hmm.
and we played in there, and Bob went to that show. Well, actually, I don't think he went to our first show there. Maybe it was the second one. But somewhere in between there, we saw a flyer. And I worked at a surf shop at the time, RC Surf Lines. And I remember a bunch of people came in, skated in, like, hey, check this out. And there's a flyer. And it said something like punk rock in Chula Vista. It was this flyer. And it told about this band, Neighborhood Watch. And we're like, what? Who's this other band?
Yeah.
And the show is at Vinyl Communication Studio. It's like, what is this? We couldn't believe it. And we're like, well, somebody else is out there in Chula Vista doing this too. And so we all went to that, and immediately there's, just this great bond. And at the time, we were going to all these San Diego shows. Lots more now were happening in Jackie Robinson, Discharge Blast, COC, Dag Nasty, Youth Brigade, all these bands are playing there now. And those were becoming more and more violent of shows. And so about that point, I think maybe I would say at this Dag Nasty show, there was a real turning point because it was so violent. And right about that time, it seemed to me like my timeline could be off, but right about that time, I think there were all these little scenes, Chula Vista, Pacific Beach, Claremont, all these other scenes that were going on, and they were all meeting up, going to these bigger shows. But I think when the shows got so bad to where you just didn't feel like going there and seeing or being at risk, all these scenes kind of pulled back and kind of just developed their own little scene. So then the Chula Vista scene was developing in Claremont, Pacific Beach, and all kinds of other scenes. Some of these scenes, so-called scenes, may have just been one band.
Sure.
And the Friends are 2 bands, and others had 4 or 5 bands, but they were all developing, all very valid, and all trying to get something done. And so right about that time, I think, like I said, when we connected with Neighborhood Watch, we realized, wow, there's all these other bands. We're going to have all these other bands in Chula Vista. And we were. There was a lot of bands starting in Chula Vista at the time. And so then when Bob said, hey, and then to top it off, when we go to the show, Neighborhood Watch has a 7-inch.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my God, it was so cool. There's this band from Chula Vista, and they got this record out. Thought that was so cool. And so at some point, Bob asked us, hey, you guys want to do 7-inch? I can record it here. This time we put it out, and we were just blown away.
Sure.
Like, wow, we're going to do a 7-inch. We just couldn't believe it. And it was, so it was recorded. We had already been playing a while at that time, but we just didn't even see. I think we wanted to do a record somewhere along the ways, but we didn't really see that as a possibility yet, because we were just in here in the circle of Chula Vista bands, and none of us knew anything about how to put a record out. We knew it was possible, and there were all these independent records out there. Yeah, but we didn't know yet how.
Well, there was a lot to it back then. I mean, I remember even the first time that I ever did a record would have been like 96-ish, and to get something pressed, it was like, there's all these different people you had to go to. Like, I had to go to this outside guy for the mastering.
Yeah.
You gotta find this guy that can master it in a special way. Then you couldn't buy the labels from the same guy that was pressing the records, so you had to get the labels somewhere, and then the labels had to get sent to the pressing plant. And it's just a lot for kids. You kind of need a little hand holding.
It was, yeah. Even the covers, and our record was delayed because the cover that was going to be printed at this place in Chula Vista, and we took them the art, and it wasn't just going to be Xerox. It wasn't going to be just put in a copy machine. It was going to be actually printed.
The cardstock.
And it took them forever.
Sure.
It took them forever to do that. Something now that just takes no time.
Yeah.
But it took forever, and so when we did finally release it, the first release is just photocopied. Let's make 50 photocopies.
Couldn't wait.
And we'll sell them at the show. Because this is taking too long.
Yeah.
And there was things like that. The mastering, and that was mastered by someone in Bonita, who was also a teacher at Hilltop High School. He did not like our record, and he told the student that actually Sergio's sister Myra had a sticker, Amenity sticker, and he says, "Do you know this band or something?" And she said, "Yeah, I don't even know if she said, yeah, my brother is in," but she said, "Yeah," and he said something about it being offensive to him, and I'm sure he would even laugh at that.
Yeah, at least the check cleared.
Yeah.
You know?
True. But yeah, all that stuff it's funny. It was done so locally, but it took so long to get it done.
Yeah, and how did it feel to have it be out? It's a real accomplishment, right?
It was a huge.
You want to carry it with you everywhere you go.
It was huge. Yeah, I want to carry it with it. I think I did. But back in the theory. No, it was definitely an accomplishment, and it was incredible because then so many people that I knew that maybe didn't even go to hardcore shows, maybe people I worked with at the surf shop or family members or something, like, "Oh, you what?"
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there were lots of people that bought the record that may not have ever even played.
Oh, absolutely.
But just like,
absolutely.
"Oh, you put out a record?" Like, wow, this was such a surprise.
Yeah. And it's very early, 87. It's early.
Yeah.
You know? I love the bass tone on it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's not well thought out. It's just how his bass sounded. But it's I don't know, it's like a Youth Crew record, and it's got a little bit of a dirty sound.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Now, is that the first straight edge hardcore record from Chula?
Yeah.
And is Amenity the first straight edge band from Chula?
Yeah.
There was no one else.
And maybe even San Diego, and I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely other straight edge people in San Diego, and maybe I missed that band. But it was probably also.
But definitely no one prolific.
Yeah.
No one that ran with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then, so a year later you're on the Open Your Eyes tape comp.
Yeah.
And that's a wild comp. That's the Unit Pride, Reason to Believe, Brotherhood, No for an Answer. That's a fucking lineup virus scene.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
That was, I don't even know if I can remember how that came about.
Just someone called you and said,
we developed this connection with Seattle.
Okay.
And when I say we, I'm not just talking about Amenity, but really Chula Vista and San Diego, we developed this thing with Seattle, where maybe it wasn't just that Amenity was going up there to play, or Force Down was going up there to play, or that they were coming down here to play. Seattle bands would come down here, but just the people that would go to our shows that would come along with us, or any other band would go up there. And so there were lots of new friendships between Seattle and San Diego.
And did you go up there?
Yeah.
What would have been the first time, before or after the first 7-inch?
It would have been after the second 7-inch.
After the second 7-inch.
This is our struggle 7-inch, yeah.
Cool.
And then, of course, we had, and then Greg Anderson moved down to Chula Vista. And then we recorded 4 songs with him, and which he later put out on Battery, and which came with the I just went blank, Boiling Point scene.
Okay.
And and then that last 7-inch, Breathe, on Scorch Records, that was put out from Seattle too. So we had
it's a serious connection.
Yeah, we had all this connection with, and it continued even after Amenity was gone. There were still, I don't know, I don't think it quite exists now, but there were still other bands from San Diego and Seattle that were going back and forth into each other.
Yeah, I drove Overmind Body on tour to Seattle, and they killed it up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that was just because they were doing really well at that point, or if there was something more behind it. But
and
I'm not sure.
And they would have, Daniel and Rob, they would have already known people from Seattle. Because Rob was way back when, when Amenity was playing in the garage and stuff. Rob was there, and so he knew all those people from Seattle as well.
Yeah. So the sound starts changing pretty quickly, because the song on that comp, the Open Your Eyes tape comp, you're definitely more distorted. It's heavier. You're moving more mid-tempo, and your drummer got better. Or like he started playing like it's not like it's not the hardcore cheat beat. He's actually doing double time. It sounds like.
Yeah.
So it's like a significant improvement. Do you think it's just you get that first record and you're so stoked, but you listen to it and you're like, we got to tighten this up a bit?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I would say even by the time we recorded that first 7-inch, even those were the songs we chose, we were already experimenting.
You're already past it.
Yeah, we were already conscious of being a straight edge band that was gonna be different than other straight edge bands.
Yeah, and you're on a couple comps, kind of like a little stretch there. 88 is that one. 89, you're on that Maximum Rock and Roll comp.
Yeah.
With Screeching Weasel and Nausea and Christ on a Crutch. Another hell of a lineup, huh?
Yeah.
And that was a song from the Chula Vista 7-inch.
Yeah.
And then also you're on the Voice of Thousands comp.
Voice of Thousands.
Which is another hell of a comp. Outspoken Integrity, Endpoint, Raid, Face Value. Yeah. And that one's wild because you're the first song on it.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And that's again from the Chula Vista 7-inch.
Yeah.
And the Chula Vista 7-inch and the This Is Our Struggle 7-inch are both 1990. But I don't know what comes first.
This Is Our Struggle came first. That was recorded at Double Time Studios.
Yeah, out there in El Cajon.
Yeah. Excuse me, not Double Time. I got that totally wrong.
Okay.
Not Double Time, no. Mix Masters.
Okay.
I was way off. We've never recorded at Double Time. Mix Masters studio, and I don't even remember where that was. But Mix Masters, there was an engineer named Joe that worked there that was really good to work with. He was learning. We were learning. Joe is actually a Grammy Award-winning engineer now, engineering for like Green Day and No Doubt, and
holy cow,
and all these huge bands. But yeah, that came first, and then came the recordings that were used on the Chula Vista 7-inch. Although that was a cassette demo. You know, it was good. We called it a demo. It was good enough quality to put on vinyl.
Mm-hmm.
But we put it out.
You put it out as a cassette first, and then it later came out.
Yeah.
So, but This Is Our Struggle came before.
But This Is Our
tape?
Struggle came before that.
It's hard putting this all in.
You know,
you know.
It's hard,
but it's cool. And by the This Is Our Struggle 7-inch, I mean your sound is fully developed.
Yeah.
You're doing like, it's more mid-tempo. It's like a unique sound. You got these wild, like, screechy guitars behind some of it. And how did you guys, like, kind of settle into that sound? Who were your influences, like, around that time?
Well, I think one big difference is it was change of singers.
Okay.
Robin was our first singer. He was probably started when he was like 16,
sure,
maybe even 15. And he left us for his girlfriend, who he was not spending enough time with, and he made the right decision because they've been married ever since, and they have 2 kids,
awesome,
and they're doing really well. But it is the classic,
sure,
you know, gotta leave the band, you know,
sure,
to be with my girlfriend. So Robin left at that time, and then somebody named Chris Squire, who was from Pacific Beach, he saw us at some show, and he was the one that connected Mike Denny, who became Mike Down,
mm-hmm,
to us. And Mike, don't quite remember. Mike, I think we called Barry our drummer. Somehow we connected.
Sure.
That was, I think, was the big turning point in our sound. Although we were starting to write some things different, and experimenting with our sound. Then now we had somebody who vocally had different ideas as well that was going to be thrown into the mix. So Mike, I think, played a big, even though he wasn't playing guitar or anything like that, he played a big part in that too. Just his presence was different. His interests, his influences were different. You know, at the time, I think, you know, there was so much like youth crew, straight edge bands, and we loved all that stuff, and we would play with those bands. But we wanted to throw in all these other things that we were just, you know, Bad Brains has always been my favorite band, and from them I started learning about all these other types of music, different guitarists that I would learn from, and you know, you kind of learn about, get into one band and you learn about their influences, and
sure,
you listen to that and like, oh wow, and that opens up a whole new door to something else. So I think there was a lot of that going on. For Barry, I would say right about that time, that would have been Mike's first show. Mike's first show was with Scream, and we played with Scream. We got a call from Scott Bartoloni, who was in Heroin and some other bands. And Scott did Tied Down Productions, and he called me and said, yeah, you guys want to play a show? Scream is going to be playing, and I'd like to have you guys in the bill. And I don't know if I had ever really met Scott in person at that time, but he just got my number and offered us this show. And then he said, but I heard you don't have a singer. I said, oh no, we got a singer, and yeah, we'll be there. And I had never even heard Mike hadn't even come to our practice.
Yeah.
Yet, but we were gonna try him out, but it's pretty much a done deal. Just because we want to play with Scream, you know. So fortunately that worked out really well. But I would say also at that show, a big difference, you know, his name gets dropped in just about everything nowadays. But Dave Grohl was playing for Scream at the time. Yes. He was a 17-year-old high school dropout, you know, running away with this band, and he was a really heavy hitter, really hard drummer, and I remember that specifically having a big influence on Barry. Just saying, whoa, did the drummer for Scream? Oh my God, he hit so hard, and it was very. I think it was a big turning point for Barry to see that, and of course, who knew who the guy was going to end up down the road? But there was a hint of it, that's for sure. So yeah, I think that's when a lot of things.
And was there a crossover with like the Force Down band and your band? Did Mike play for both?
Yeah, Mike played guitar in Force Down.
Do you remember when they were starting compared to you guys?
Force Down was probably, would have been after This Is Our Struggle.
Pretty soon.
Yeah, it would have been after that. Obviously a shorter lifespan, but it would have been, I think 89 or 90.
And how was that? Like
90.
having a guy break off and do another band? Was there any weird feelings about that at all?
No, I don't think there was weird feelings. I mean, we were still playing a lot. Amenity was still playing a lot of shows, and so no, I don't think so. It was kind of the way a lot of bands were going back then. Everybody had their quote unquote project.
Their main and then their side.
Yeah,
and Force Down was his side project.
Yeah. And it was kind of, to me, I do think it, at that time there were way too many side projects. Everybody was saying, "Oh, we're going to do a side project." My thought was always, well, why don't this other thing you want to do? Why don't you just incorporate it into your other band?
Sure.
I can understand the appeal of a side project though, but it's kind of like a lot of bands, they had this sound, and then there was something else they wanted to experiment with. It wasn't that far off, but they didn't feel like they could incorporate it.
And you think they should have just taken a risk and done a little bit of that in the main band? I think that's fair. Yeah. So how is Amenity doing? Like, how many kids are you drawing, do you think, after This Is Our Struggle?
Well, we were playing everything from, garages, a lot of garages, a lot of backyards, and then the more, I might call hall shows, say Scream. That was probably, 300-400 people maybe.
You're doing like main support on those shows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were, at that time, there weren't a lot of bigger hardcore acts coming through. At least not like today, you'll have a bigger club and some band is coming, and then they've got there was nothing quite like, say, Gorilla Biscuits a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Nothing like that going on. But there was, the acts that were coming through that you could call bigger: Verbal Assault, Judge, Chain of Strength. Bands like that, Bold, were coming through, but they were all playing in the garage. We were all playing Del Mar's Garage, which was just south of Chula Vista in South San Diego. And it was just a garage. It was just your basic...
Was it a 3-car garage?
2-car garage. 2-car garage. 2-car garage and with a washer and dryer.
All right.
And, some boxes of things being stored. And that garage had... it would be ridiculously packed with kids. Everybody would come out soaked. But it just had, like, the bands I just mentioned: Verbal Assault, Judge, Soulside, Bold, Chain of Strength. All these bands would be coming through and would play. They'd ask to play in Del Mar's Garage.
So cool.
And yeah, it was incredible. I got Soulside played there one time, and they loved it. And they told us how much they loved the show and loved playing there. But you kind of, they're just being nice. It was a good show, definitely, but they're just happy to play somewhere, And I got a call months later from Pete in Verbal Assault, and who I did not know. But we loved
just
Verbal
out of the blue.
Assault. Well, yeah, just out of the blue.
You can tell. I think Verbal Assault's a big influence on.
Oh yeah.
On the second 2 7-inches. Yeah.
And Pete called, and he said, "Hi, I speak to Tim Gonzales." And I said, "Yeah, this is Tim. Hi, Tim. This is Pete. I'm in a band called Verbal Assault, and I was calling about playing the show. And Bobby from Soulside said, he played in the garage, and he said it was a good show." And I'm like, "Who is this?" And he said, "This is Pete. I'm in a band called Verbal Assault." And I said, "Oh, hey, Pete. Hey, this is HR." Bad Brains. And then it's just, there's silence, And then I'm thinking, I said, "This is Pete from Verbal." I said, "Yeah, this is Pete from Verbal." He told me the same thing again.
Oh, yeah.
And then he told me that that Bobby from Soulside had told us that they played there and that it was the best show on the tour, which made, we joke that they must have had a really bad tour. But no, it was a great show when Soulside played. And he said, "Yeah, so we want to play that garage." And so it's like, "Yeah, definitely do that. We'll get you on the bill." And And we got them in the bill, and it was an incredible show. And it wasn't Verbal Assault playing a garage. It was Verbal Assault playing. They may have well have been on a stage with full sound system and hundreds of people out there, but they were in this garage with a washer and dryer, and,
oh my God.
And mom and dad sticking their head in occasionally in the back door, and it was just they just gave it their all. And
I wish I could have seen that.
Incredible show.
Trial's top 5 for me.
Oh right, yeah.
I love it.
Definitely. So it was an incredible show, and they were nice enough. And I don't know how many bands do this, but because we did that for them, then they got us on the bill with them at Gilman Street and then up in Seattle. So we played those 2 shows with them. And
how did he go over?
And and it was such an incredible trade. We get
sure,
you get the show in the garage, and they give us Gilman Street and Seattle. And excuse me, not even Gilman Street, Seattle. It's Gilman Street, Seattle, Spokane, and Canada.
Wow.
And just being nice guys. Hey, you guys did this for us, and so we're going to give you these shows too.
And would that have been your first time going to NorCal?
That I believe that was the first time.
Yeah.
Well, no, not to NorCal, but to Seattle.
To Seattle.
Yeah,
you played Gilman before?
Street a few times before, yeah. Played up there. Del Mar's Garage, No for an Answer, local bands, Outward, Misguided Children, all these other bands would play in that garage. It was a great place. We were really lucky to have that place. And for Del Mar, who lived there, we were really lucky to have him and to have his parents.
Well, it is a place that you can see all these great bands, and you're also sheltered from the violence there. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like there's no fuckery.
No. There might have been a little hints of it starting to well up, but it was shut down.
You can keep it out.
It was shut down real fast. It was much more manageable. And when I say shut down, it wasn't like, hey, motherfucker, we're going to kick your ass.
Right.
It was none of that.
This is not the time or the place.
It was, not the time or the place, and everybody understood that. People would, okay, I'm going to chill out. I'm going to calm down. So we didn't have those problems.
Yeah. But in the early 90s, it's still going on, all the craziness. The violence?
And I would say it pretty much fizzed out by that end. The bigger shows, the Jackie Robinson YMCA shows, they were great shows, but they were all violent, and they all just kind of fizzed out. That whole
by the Force Down Amenity time.
By that time, and by the time all these little smaller scenes started coming together and playing more shows together at different places. Most of these different places, there would only be like maybe 1 or 2 shows there, and then we move to something else. By that time, that whole other scene, what was called the slow death kind of scene, that whole scene just kind of phased out. Kind of, a lot of that still existed, but it definitely was not the main hardcore scene at that time. Yeah.
You guys do another comp. This one's on Evolution.
Yeah.
Kent McClard's label, Heart Attack Fanzine, and again, you get top billing, #1 song.
Yeah,
people loved you guys.
I always, that was.
And
that's
incredible. And that's Born Against and Bikini Kill on that record.
Yeah,
and Amenity top billing. That's awesome, and that song is cool.
Yeah,
it's like a kind of hard to describe. Like it's that real Amenity like dream. We're keeping it. It's that like Amenity dreamy. Like the dreaminess that is sometimes in your songs, I think.
Oh, interesting way to.
Yeah, which kind of like plays into that last record he did. But before you did the last 7-inch, you did another band as well. You did the House of Suffering, no? So you're guilty of your own side project.
That was after.
It was after.
Yeah, that was after. That was by the time we played our last show. And what happened? The end of Amenity.
Is that because Breathe came out after the band was broken up?
It came out after the band was broken up.
So that's what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So what year did Amenity end, and why did you decide to end it?
Amenity ended, I guess, 1990. Our last show was November 30th of 1990 at San Diego State Backdoor, which was the second time we had played there. And it was a much more quote unquote professional venue than we would normally play. And we had gotten, Mike wanted to leave the band. Mike didn't want to do that anymore. I think I attribute a lot of it to, at the time, a lot of bands were breaking up. I think hardcore had kind of not run its course, but was just at this period where it felt like, hey, I've gotten pretty mature. I'm like 23 years old now.
Sure.
And so I don't know about this kid stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to move on. Maybe I need to do some. Maybe I need to be a DJ.
Sure.
Whatever it may be. And I think a lot of bands were doing that at the time. And really, I attribute a lot of it to that. It was kind of going with the flow of other bands. Everybody's band was breaking up at the time. And I think we had kind of slowed down on some things. Maybe we kind of felt like it had run its course. That there wasn't anything further we could have done. I felt we could have. I felt we could have done more.
Well, of course you could have, because that last 7-inch is so awesome.
Yeah.
And that's it's a shame that didn't come out when you're a band, right? It's kind of like a tragedy, right? Because it's the most interesting thing you guys do. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like that 7-inch is the most interesting piece of music that Amenity puts out. Like, it sounds like nothing else. It just sounds like this band writing something unique. It sounds like Amenity.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a shame that it's cut short. So of course there was more you could do, because you put out that 7-inch and let people hear the songs.
Yeah. Because I really think we kind of evolved into our own little thing. It wasn't going to be like our own scene, and it wasn't like, my God, there's nothing ever sounded like this before. But
I don't know if you should sell yourself short there. That's very I don't know if there is stuff that sounded like that before. It's interesting.
Well, what I mean though is it's not like I think we had created our own sound.
Sure.
And you could say this fits in the hardcore genre. It's not the same tempos or this and that.
It's pushing boundaries without.
It's unique.
Yeah.
But what I mean is that, like, lots of bands, they do something different and they think they've just completely changed the history of music. And I don't think we would go that far, but I do think we sold ourselves short on that. We did create.
Well, you didn't write The Shape of Punk to Come.
No, we did not. No. Thank God.
I know.
And no, I think we did sell ourselves short in that respect. That it was. But again, I kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Lifespan for a hardcore band at that time, at our age, we felt like we were veterans. We've been together for 4 years,
right? Which
back then is a long time. Now you live 4 years, like, well, whatever.
No, I know.
But it kind of felt like wow, we've been doing this for so long.
Yeah, and you would have been around what age in 1991?
Would have been 20 something. 20
mid 20s,
mid 20s maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's the apex of like hardcore washed up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being 24 and just being like a piece of shit, washed up, like thought I'd seen it all, like I was rude to people, like just, well, I was fucking 24, it was 15 years ago. It was terrible, And yeah, I mean, same thing, right? You've been in this band for 4 years, you're in your mid 20s, and it's like you're washed up, kind of. Yeah. But then you pull through it and you realize, like, God, we're so lucky for every single little thing we have, right?
Yeah.
Every record that you get to put out, every time you get to jam with someone, anytime that you get to like express yourself through music, like it's so finite.
It is,
like tomorrow, you could just turn around and no one wants to play with you anymore.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, I'm never going to get to strum a guitar to a drum beat.
Yeah.
And man, what a sad day that would be.
And it's one of the most incredible feelings.
Absolutely. Or I saw this stupid meme the other day, and it was like, everyone burned their last like mix CD, like someday without realizing it was the last time they burned it, because like life moves on or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I always worry, like, what if that last piece of music I put out is my last piece of music?
Last piece of music,
yeah. So I don't know. I think the lifers are the ones that pull out of like that mid-20s, I know everything funk, and realize like how special everything is.
Yeah. You have to realize that.
Yeah.
And that's for life in general, or it's just going to be really miserable.
Well, that's the other thing too, is you need some outside hardcore perspective, because like you're an old man in hardcore at 30, and it's like, in what other aspect of life would that ever be? Like 30 is like you're still a kid.
Yeah.
Like 40, 50, like these are like the prime of your life.
Yeah.
But hardcore, it's like you're a fossil.
Yeah, that's it.
So Amenity breaks up, and how did you feel? Like you're just kind of, was it heartbreaking?
Before, I would no. I wish Amenity had continued. But before we even, before that last show, we had already decided, Barry and Serge and I already decided we were going to keep going. And we had a friend named Daryl, who would go to Amenity shows, and he really wanted to do a band with us. And that last, actually, he didn't want to do a band with us. He always wanted to perform with us, with Amenity. And he, on the very last show, he does this rap on stage, and which he had always wanted to do. And so he finally got to do it at our last show. So because I told him, this is the last show, so you're going to want to keep doing this. So before that last show, we said, why don't we do a band with Daryl? Do a band with Daryl, and we'll mix. We'll have a little of his hip hop mixed with what we're doing now and the direction we're already going. And so we had already had that set. I don't remember if we already had songs by that show, but we had already decided that's what we were going to do.
And that would become House of Suffering.
And that would become House of Suffering. And House of Suffering then, with Daryl, continued for maybe a year.
The 7 inches are a year apart.
Yeah. And that was very different, because now all of a sudden we're being asked to play these venues. There was like Soma in downtown San Diego, and Soma was a big club and had much bigger acts that would play there. And somebody, and I imagine it was Daryl, said he went there. Well, yeah, Daryl said he went there and he talked to the owner about playing. He says, yeah, man, well, maybe you guys can play the dungeon. You can play the dungeon and so forth. And he's like, no, we want to play the top stage. They had 2 floors.
Yeah.
The beginner acts at the bottom, and upstairs was dancing and stuff like this. And so that was a very different stage. And I don't remember exactly if we started by playing the downstairs thing, but it was a big deal, and it was very different because we were on 91X before that show sometime. And there was a call. Somebody called in and said, why are you guys playing? And maybe that she wasn't that angry in her tone, but she didn't like that we were playing Soma.
Okay.
And she had good reason to. And she said, they're not an all ages venue. They're this and they're that. And
they weren't all ages at that time.
They weren't all ages at that time. And we did say, though, that our show was going to be all ages. Mm-hmm. And we told them it needs to be all ages. But she didn't think we should play it at all because they weren't all ages. And I still agree, if you can get a club to play for all ages, then do it regardless of what they do during the other shows. But because we were very strictly all ages. So that was very different for us. Now we're getting. I think we played the Che Cafe once, and I felt like after we played Soma, we never played the Che after we played Soma, and I think they didn't want us to play there anymore because we'd become a part of that. So it was very different because the shows at the Che, we were playing the Che Cafe all the time.
Sure.
During the late 80s, and now we weren't.
Sure.
We weren't being asked to play anything at the Che. We had people questioning us about where we were playing. It was very different. It didn't hurt or anything. I knew we were in a different field now.
Did this happen after the first 7-inch came out?
This happened after during
both, just during the time span of the band.
I completely remember, but yeah, during the time span of that band. And so that was something very different to have been a part of the scene at the Che to now not playing there, and to be a band that was of the people.
Right.
And now we have people questioning us. No, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't play there. And they were all very, very valid comments from people that question these things. But and we stayed an all ages band, but it was different because now we're up on the main stage at Soma, and we had, different Bad Religion, bands like that we would be playing shows with.
Really?
That were, much bigger at the time.
So you played with Bad Religion in like 91, 92?
Something, yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we had The Offspring, for instance. We played a show with The Offspring were below us. And so it was a very different scene. There were more people saying, like, yeah, you guys need to get on a major, or, all these bands are being signed to majors. Daryl left. We had Daryl leave the band, and there was an incident, with his girlfriend that we couldn't support and didn't want to be to be a part of the band. We love Daryl, and still today, Daryl passed away 4 or 5 years ago. But and we remained friends. It was a little bumpy, but we remained friends. But he was no longer in the band, and at about that time too, it was kind of like, I think House of Suffering, the mix of rap was very mild. We didn't want to overdo it, and it was perfect timing too, because right about that time, then all these bands were doing this rap thing. And we was like, oh no, we don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Like,
we should talk about the music a little bit though, because it is like it's a pretty hard right turn after like the end of Amenity to that. Like the first House of Suffering 7-inch, it could be like pretty big nowadays. Like there's such a resurgence of like that 90s hardcore, and kind of like a lot of the 90s hardcore that I don't remember being like popular then, like the Biohazards and stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't really remember them being like a huge hardcore band. I remember them like kind of playing outside of the scene. Like I never saw Biohazard like play a hardcore show necessarily out here.
Yeah,
it's kind of a little more metally. I think maybe there was like a little more crossover. So like the worship of like the Biohazards and the Life of Agony is like, I don't know. These are just bands that they didn't affect me in the 90s.
Yeah.
I liked them musically, but I don't know, I didn't really feel like they were hardcore type bands. But that first House of Suffering sounds very Biohazard-y for 91, which is pretty wild, because that's like kind of the Biohazard era. You might have like beat them to a little bit of their sound, And then the second record is like, it's kind of another right turn also. Like it moves away from like, the first one's a little more raw and a little more like old Biohazard, and the second one is like more of is cleaner. Like, I don't know, it sounds like maybe you spent a little more time in the studio, and it's more of like leeway-ish without like the fast parts. Just kind of like I don't know, like that's the sound I get off it. Do you disagree?
No, I don't disagree. No, it definitely cleaner sound. Part of it, of course, is going to be where we recorded at. But part of it, when we started House of Suffering, that was one thing we said as far as songwriting goes and playing, is we're going to tighten up everything. Lots of bands, my kind of pet peeve is, there's like, say, 4 riffs in a song, and the drummer's playing the riff one way, and the next time that riff comes around, he's playing it a different way, or he's playing 4 bars of that riff, and 3 of the bars he's playing one beat, and the next one he's playing different, and it just gets to be a mess. So our thing was like, no, we're gonna tighten these things up. This section is gonna be like this section the next time it comes around, and we're gonna really hone our songwriting craft and the song structure, most importantly. And so we definitely focused on that. We had conscious discussions about song structure and keeping things together. And definitely by that second one, we're definitely extremely on that. And then the recording studio was up in Orange County, and I don't remember the name, but the guy that worked the studio, I remember coming in the back of the studio, and Caton knew the guy, and Caton was going to have us record. We come in the back of the studio, it's like, wow, look at this sound room. We're walking through. A couple of guys from Head First were with us too, and we're, I'm kind of dragging behind, checking out all the rooms. And then as I walk into, the soundboard, the mixing board, and this engineer is sitting there, and I just saw him from the back, and everybody's standing around him, and he's talking, this and that. And as I get up close to him, then I'm looking at the guy, and I'm thinking, like, is this guy serious? Like, is he joking about something? And I couldn't tell if he had a wig on or what, but like he didn't have a lot of hair, and it was in a ponytail, and he was wearing kind of like a, I don't know what you call a coat, something like they would have wore like in the Civil War.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, is he going to start laughing and take this stuff off? And then I realized, like, no, this guy is obsessed with recording, and that's why he's like this. And as he's talking to us, it's like, this is what he does.
He's a total eccentric.
All day, 24/7. Yeah. This is his thing. And that's why he's molded to that chair. And so he was very, he probably spent more time on that without us even there than we did. He was very meticulous with things. One of the things different that in hindsight, for me, maybe we shouldn't have done is the drums were triggered, which is pretty common now, at least in metal. All these drums are triggered, but he didn't.
And also in all that new school punk from the 90s.
Yeah, a lot of that, yeah.
They trigger the kick drum.
Yeah.
The Ryan Green sound.
Yeah. And so he wanted to do that. We did that. I don't dislike that, but it was very different. And definitely cleaner sound, definitely.
Which is wild to go for a recording that good for a 2-song 7-inch.
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, it's just like a sign of the times.
That was part of that was Caton. Caton was very. I was always impressed that Caton would call me and say, "Hey, Tim, hey, check this out. I have this idea," and he'd be singing me these things over the phone, and like, yeah, that was good. I never had anybody do that. Which, don't get me wrong, Mike, had all these ideas, but he wasn't going to call me up and start singing.
Sure.
Plus, Mike didn't really sing, and I mean
Sure.
that in the very best way. Like, I would not sing to anybody over the phone, but. So Caton had that professionalism because of his experience. He knew lots of things, lots of people that we did not have any connection with, and knew lots about recording and who to record with. And, we used to I remember going to somewhere, Hollywood, and Beastie Boys, and I think it was the Beastie Boys and Rage Against the Machine were playing or something, and he's like, yeah, come on. Let's go. I can get us in. And we went to the back, and here's this guy. I didn't know who he was at the time, but it was the bass player of Megadeth. And he's, Caton, what's up? Oh, yeah, this and that. Rah, rah, rah. And then a little while, walk a little more, and then there's Mike Watt. Caton, yeah, what's up? And that was always, anyway, in San Diego. Caton comes to San Diego, and every corner we turned, there was somebody that knew Caton.
Yeah.
And they weren't just fans. They were people that knew Caton. So he had brought a whole new professionalism with him that we strive for. I don't think we hit it. Definitely not where Caton was at, but he brought us a lot of new experiences that we wouldn't have had without him.
Yeah. And what do you do for the next 20 years musically? You have a giant gap on your discogs.
big gap.
Between, so the Amenity, like, discography CD comes out in 94.
Yeah.
And then you do Adult Crash in 2014.
Yeah.
And what was in between?
Adult Crash started in about 2000, 2001.
Okay.
Maybe it was 2001.
Did you do 7 inches?
and no, just their 12-inch.
Just the 12-inch
So,
that
but
finally
that
came
came
out.
out later. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, in between there was me sitting on my bed playing my guitar.
Yeah. And you got to have a career too at some point, right?
Yeah, at some point, yeah. And there was a little Amenity reunion. We played a few songs at Unbroken's last show.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I don't remember what year that was, but that was in there too. And then, of course, the next Amenity reunion, but there was that small one. But during that time, what was important to me, was very important to me, actually, and I think really brought me to the next period, was, I was still into hardcore. I wouldn't go to shows as much, I wouldn't go to shows as much, but I was still into hardcore. It was different for me then at that time. A lot of the bands were doing these kind of quirkier kind of styles that didn't quite grab me. But during that time, that's when I connected with like Anthony Guzman, Fernie, Alex, and all these guys in this Chula Vista scene. I was driving down the street one afternoon, and I heard a hardcore band playing somewhere. I'm like, no, that's a live band. And so I'm driving around these streets trying to track this band down. Like, where is this at? And then I'm getting down the street. I'm thinking, oh, it's on this street. I pull up, like, yeah, it's here. And probably like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, sunshine, and just suburban street in Chula Vista. And I'm walking to the side of this yard. I have no idea whose house this is or where I'm going. But I hear there's a hardcore band, and it's a hardcore band. It's not, this somebody's playing fast. And I walk back there, and they had this band, Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And they were playing in this backyard. And I was really tripping out. If I remember correctly, they even had an Amenity sticker on there, the bass drum, a bunch of stickers on there. And I was like, what in the world is this? I couldn't believe it. I was so stoked to see this. And there were all these kids there, and they had this band going. And I think I came in right at the end of the show. And then they were talking to me about their band, and that's how I first met them.
Yeah, I think that was Guzman's first band.
Yeah. And so they started, hey, do you have any Amenity 7-inches? So, yeah, I got a lot of Amenity 7-inches, and like, yeah, here, this, and, you got any shirts? I don't think I had any shirts, but and they knew so much about Amenity, and it really blew my mind how much they knew. And so, I'm sure they would say like, oh, it was really cool. He gave us these records and he told us about this. And blah, blah, blah. But for me, it was really cool. Because really what that did for me is, it made me think, wow, look at this thing is still going. Like I knew hardcore wasn't dead. I knew that. But this thing out of Chula Vista was still going. And these guys and gals were carrying it and going other places with this. And it was really inspiring for me. It was really to see these people doing this. And out of Chula Vista in particular, was really inspirational. It really made me want to play music. I knew I would play music again. It just wasn't the right timing. But it really, they have no idea how inspiring that was for me to meet them and see what their bands were doing. And that was really, I wouldn't say it started Adult Crash, but it kind of helped me speed up to that point when I would start doing Adult Crash. Because I think one of the things that it did that was really different, I think, where hardcore was going at that time, is it was being much more accepting of people over 23 years old.
Sure.
You could see these people, they still like these other bands. And it kind of validated that it wasn't just this little trend, it was an actual culture.
Mm-hmm.
And, to be in a part of a culture, it doesn't mean it ends at this age. It means it's a culture. It's going to carry on. And that culture, I think you see that more in, say, like New York hardcore or San Francisco, places like that, where you see these bands and people that are still a part of something, not as much in San Diego. But
I don't know. I don't know if you should sell yourself short on that either, because it's like the Chula Vista thing was kind of started by Amenity and it carried on that way, right?
Yeah.
It carried on to the Guzman era. Then, that that age range.
Yeah.
And then like right after him carried on through to the Take Offense guys.
Yeah.
And, if you want to talk about it being a culture, now it's like, it's hard to forget that they're like older now because they popped on the scene and they're like, teenagers, and here they are. It's 14 years later or whatever that they've been in a band.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And they haven't slowed down, and they've been waving the Chula Vista flag now since they started. So that's a pretty long chain. If you're going to say that Amenity started in 85 and it's still going 2019.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to be proud of, especially because San Diego's not like we're not a first tier city.
No.
Like if a band comes here, we don't really ever get them on a Friday or a Saturday. You guys probably get them on a Sunday or a Thursday. Oxnard, we get them on a Tuesday. But I mean, it's very similar. I feel like a kinship with like the Chula Vista thing because that's how it was with Oxnard. Like you want to like boost up your like smaller town.
Yeah.
Like here we are, we're on the map.
Yeah.
I never understood like people claiming SoCal, stuff like that. It's like you're claiming like Otay to Blythe to like what I mean, to like San Fernando. Like where are you claiming? Like don't you choose your little pocket? And that's why it was so cool when we were trying to like put the Oxnard thing back on the map. Then you had this band called Die Hard Youth, and they were from like the tiniest little town, Tehachapi. They're like, "What's up, Tehachapi hardcore?" I was like, "This is awesome," So the Chula thing's cool. Like just to make it a little separate from San Diego.
Yeah.
It's still San Diego, but it's
San
still
Diego,
like
but it was,
it's ours,
Yeah.
right? So
Definitely.
I think that's cool. And that Adult Crash LP or EP, 12-inch EP, it's like 6 songs?
5 songs.
5 songs? What a fucking ripper. Like, I don't know, like how do you do an album that awesome after being around so long? Like, you know what I mean? Like how it's like some people like fade and get soft, and like you put out probably the most aggressive piece of music that you ever did.
Oh yeah.
And it's the last thing you did. The most recent thing.
Most recent, yeah. Most recent released.
Most recent release. Because you've recorded again?
Crash recording that we need to release, I think it's 6 songs.
That got recorded?
Yeah.
How long ago did you record?
Like a year.
God damn it. Jump on that, Colin. What the fuck are you doing? Will he do the next one?
I don't know.
Well, get it out, man. What the fuck? You've been sitting on the recording for a year?
Yeah.
Hey, someone put that record out. What the fuck is happening right now? But, what went into that record? And, I mean, to me, like, that record sounds like you went in to do something and you fucking executed it, like, exactly how you wanted to. Is that a fair take?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it sounds just so meaty and, like, it sounds like I don't know what you call this decade. The 2010s?
Yeah, what do you say?
It's legitimately like the 2010s SSD, with like an upgraded sound and just like the beating on shit and the fucking speed. And then like, the only difference would be like your voice is more of like a real yell instead of like a zany voice, Springa's voice is like, you can't, it's like, how do you explain it?
Yeah.
It's one of the most amazing, crazy punk voices ever, where your voice is just like a strong ass meaty voice,
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, that's my take.
No, I like that. I like that too. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was definitely a very conscious decision that this is, we want to be a hardcore band. We want to do the AC/DC thing, which is kind of release the same record over and over and over.
Sure.
And so Pat and I started Out Crash, and with Oscar, who was in Impel, playing bass, and Kevin Murphy from Farside, and 411 was and Head First was singing. And we played maybe 2 shows, I think, with Kevin, something like that. And Rich Zawacki was playing bass at first, as far as the band goes. Rich Zawacki. We went through a few bass players, but it was basically Rich Zawacki as we were writing songs. And that was definitely our intention. And when Pat and I started, we said, we want these types of sounds, and we want to stick with it. And when we recorded that, we recorded the music, and right about that time, Kevin was going through a divorce, and he wanted to leave San Diego, and which he did. I think it was Colorado he moved to at that time. So we were kind of left like, well, what do we do? And we didn't do anything. And we had the recording there, and we kind of licked our wounds for a while. And then Oscar, I don't even remember the order of it at the time, but Oscar, who was playing bass with us then, okay, got it. Now Kevin left to Colorado. He was going to be in a divorce, and he just needed to clear his board, and left to Colorado. Rich was going on a surf trip, and he was going to be gone for a long time. And he was living. Was that when he was living in a van? I don't remember, to save money. And then Oscar was playing bass on the recording. So we had that recording sitting there. And then one day I got a call from Oscar. He says, "Hey, I was talking to Pat. We've got that recording. We have to do something with it. And so he just told me, so you're going to sing, you're going to do the vocals on it." And I was like, what? And I really didn't want to. Or maybe I say I wanted to, but I didn't really feel comfortable because I'd never done that before. And he says, no, we got to do that. We're going to practice. We're going to start practicing again. You're going to learn to sing. So by the time we had recorded that, but then the vocals weren't recorded for years.
Oh, wow.
Because we didn't get to that point till years later. At some point we got this recording. We did. There's no vocals on it. So everything was rewritten. The music was there, but the vocals, the lyrics, everything was totally different than what Kevin had. And we did that. And that was our intention, because at that time, hardcore in San Diego become much more metal, much more some quirky kind of things, lots of weird sounds, and lots of, things going on that maybe we didn't want to play, and we wanted to play real straight up hardcore. And so we did. And like I said, we did it for a few shows with Kevin, and then we had a huge break, not because we wanted to, but it just happened that way. And then we got going again, and so on.
It's awesome. I don't have much else. I guess, someone actually told me, this is an interesting story, tell me if it's true or not. I heard you kicked POD out of the San Diego hardcore scene.
I didn't kick him out of the San Diego hardcore scene, but I think what they were talking about is Mitch had this, what we called Mitch's basement. It wasn't really a basement. It was like split level house, and he had this room where he played shows, where we had shows. There were, again, lots of big bands for hardcore at the time would play there. And I don't remember who was playing, but I don't remember. Or maybe it was House of Suffering that was playing, because they used to come to our shows. But a couple of them just started pitting, and were just not doing it the right way. And I'm open to people's interpretations, but you don't try to hurt people, and you don't do things in a way where you're going to hurt people. So I stopped them. I told them that's not what you do here. That's not why we're all here. And didn't kick them out, but they were very understanding, and everything worked out well.
Okay.
That's funny that someone told you that.
Well, that's a good story, though, right? That's like...
That is, yeah.
Well, anything else you want to brush on? Do you feel that you've been well represented?
I think I've been well represented. I do want to say, and to kind of back up to when I was talking about Guzman and Chula Vista and all that, I have to say, overall, what I've always appreciated is that... lots of times people want the older guys to respect them and their band and their scene and so forth. And I've always tried to do that. But what else what I really also respect is the younger people, and I hate talking that way. There's not a way to say it, but I really appreciate that the younger people that want me to see their band and want me to check out their band or their recording. And so over the years, always, oh yeah, this is my band. We're playing here, this and that. And I just always appreciated that they found some reason that it would be worth telling me about their band and hear their recording, check them out live and all that. And, I've had, Adult Crash. We're obviously older than the rest of most of the bands, not all, but most of the bands we play with. And I was just, I just really appreciate and admire all these quote unquote younger people that are willing to share their scene with me. It is part mine, but it is probably more theirs at this point, and I always appreciate and respect that.
That's awesome. Great.
And thank you, Zach. I'm honored to be on this. I heard your other two podcasts, the first two. I'm waiting on the other ones, but I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
To be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. So, thank you.
Yeah.